Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining on time or even early for some of you. We're just waiting for some of the participants to stream in, and then we'll give it a couple of minutes before we start the session. Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you all for joining our webinar today, where Sensing Makes Sense, Opportunities for Advancing Europe's Priorities through Earth Observation. I hope all of you are having a very good day so far, whether it's the morning or the evening for you, depending on where you're connecting. But we have a very exciting lineup for the program today, and we're very keen to kind of get this started. So just to quickly go through the agenda for today's webinar, we're going to start with an introduction from Lucy, who is the policy officer in the Strategy Program and Coordination Office at ESA Earth Observation Directorate, before we move on to providing a summary of the results from our report, where Sensing Makes Sense, that was recently published by ESPI. And then after that, we will move on to our panel of observation as a policy and enabler. And we have a fantastic lineup of panelists today. And this session will be moderated by Emily Wallace, who is a junior research fellow at SP. So before we proceed, I would like to invite anyone who have questions throughout the session to please feel free to use the Q&A function and put your questions in there. We will be monitoring it throughout the entire discussion. You are also free to kind of ask questions at the end of the panel, in which you will have the opportunity to unmute and ask your questions directly. So with that, I will hand it over to Lucy to start her session.
Thank you very much. So very happy to see many people connected. Welcome to this session. So as said, I am a policy officer. I work in the Strategy Coordination Office for Earth observation programs in ESA. I was the main point of contact from ESA side following this activity with the European Space Policy Institute on finding a way to link better Earth observation to priority policy needs. And so before going deeper into the dossier and its presentation, I also wanted to give you an insight into the ESA context and what is being done in ESA to connect Earth observation to policies. Next slide, please. So at ESA, we have a strategy that extends to 2040 with 5 key goals. And these goals, as you can see, are linked already to many policy domains. You can see links to sustainability, to environmental policies, competitiveness, science, security, and resilience. So we are definitely orienting our space activities towards policies. And this is our strategic orientation at ESA. Next slide, please. We received a record-breaking budget at our last council meeting at ministerial level, which took place last year. As you can see, our member states contributed more than 22 billion euros, and a large share was for Earth observation. So this also shows the strong recognition of space as a pillar for the implementation of the key priorities of our member states, including, of course, their key policies. Next slide, please. So this is a landscape of all of our EO missions. We are working closely with users to align EO capabilities to concrete needs. We are now culminating at a total of 109 EO missions being developed or launched and serving the needs of these users. So as you can see, we are covering commercial missions, national missions as well, science, the Copernicus program with the European Union, and meteorology with EUMETSAT. Next slide, please. So all of these capabilities and all of these space systems enable us to contribute key data to a wide range of policies already at both international and European scale. So this is just a glimpse of key policies that we contribute to. But we also know that Earth observation could do more and provide value in even more policy domains. Next slide. So it is in that context, actually, that we launched this activity with the European Space Policy Institute, as here partnering with ESPI was really crucial for us to better define the priority policy domains in Europe, the current and the upcoming policy needs where EO uptake is still too limited, and also to define a policy vision for Earth observation in the years to come. So this SP report that will be presented in a minute by Gabriele was really instrumental in providing these answers and orienting as well us in our work to boost the development of key EO capabilities aligned with policy needs and to strengthen the uptake of EO for policies in the long run. So with this, I will leave the floor to Gabriele, and I'm looking forward to the discussions.
Thanks, Lucy, and very, very happy to hear you all and see you all connected. Also, I'll take the role of the Master of Ceremony for 1 second for the people who connected in the meantime. We have just had a brief presentation from Lucy, Policy Officer at ESA Earth Observation Programs, on the scope of the activity that we ran together. And Lucy was just mentioning also the work we did on developing a policy vision for Earth observation earlier, end of last year. And we are now moving from this policy document to a more like a research dossier, which I'm going to present right now. So if I may ask Gillian to change the slide, please. We're now moving into the report that we've just published. I'll get a few minutes to introduce this report, but I know you're here more to listen to our speakers, and I'll let them comment then on the content. The report is structured quite quite easily across two main sections, if you want. The first part addresses the domain analysis, what we understand as the policy analysis, and matches it to the projects and the Earth observation solutions available. And the second part looks at the role and references of Earth observation in policies as entry points for increased uptake and benefits of space solutions. And let me just, while we move to the next slide, let me just explain the logic behind the report. What we did, it's somehow summarized in the subtitle of the report. We try to understand what opportunities are there to advance Europe's priorities in the main domains of policy through the use of Earth observation solutions, both private and publicly developed. But as a premise to that, we wanted to understand what are the domains we should look into and what should be the main objectives within each of these domains. The idea is to start from the policy angle and not from the solutions, to try to invert a process quite common in the space ecosystem, which is more of a technology push. So you first develop kind of the solutions, and then you try to understand where this might be relevant to invert the process in a context where space it's more and more an enabler of policy action in Europe and obviously beyond. So when we looked at national priorities of European countries, we mapped the main domains that are prioritized within their government declarations, and we came up with the 6 domains that you see in the slides. I wanted to give you a bit more time to look into them while commenting, but the point was then to move from the domains to the specific objectives within each domain. And for this, we move to the next slide. And this is the first step of our analysis. Basically, for all the domains that we just mentioned, so climate resilience, agriculture and food, the digital transition, peace and security, the energy domain, and the insurance domain, we identified a number of main objectives. Here, they're called use cases on the right-hand side of the slide, that we try to assess across the countries to identify their level of prioritization across the policies of the 27 countries we looked into. For this, we went through the policies of the 5 first domains, while for the insurance market, we mapped about 100 insurance companies, trying to understand what are the main products that they are covering. And this is the premise for the next part of the analysis. But in parallel, we did look into the number of references to Earth observation capabilities within these policies. And in this context, we found out, as you see on the left-hand side of the slide, that once the values are normalized by also the length of these policy documents, climate resilience and agriculture really stand out. Also, thanks to the long work that has been done in Europe through various entities and bodies, including the Copernicus User Forum and ESA activities, while there are some domains that still lag behind. On the one end, the digital policies, but especially security policies and energy policies, where the references to Earth observation and in general space capabilities are quite limited. So if this is the first stage, let me go slightly more in depth into this. You see that when please keep the next slide. That when you analyze the policies also by country, you can also have kind of a breakdown in terms of absolute references to Earth observation capabilities in policies that help you highlight which countries kind of acknowledge most the value of Earth observation for their policies. This is the the case, for instance, of climate and agriculture policies, where you see some countries really stepping up in terms of mentioning Earth observation. But again, this is the first part of the analysis in the policies. If you can change the slide, please, if we can go to the next one. In parallel to the investigation of the number of references within the policies, we were able to build maps of main objectives prioritized by countries transversally across their policies. This is the case for agri-food policies. So when looking into the various agri-food policies of the countries analyzed, we were able to identify some darker objectives here in the slide, which are the ones that are prioritized with specific policy measures by more than 90% of the analyzed countries, while then obviously the lighter the color, the less the number of countries prioritizing these objectives transversally. If we move to the second step of the analysis, sorry, this is the case of insurance. We can skip it. We'll just wanted to share how different risks are insured by these 100 companies we reviewed. But when we go to the second step, this is where the Earth observation solutions come in. In this case, what we did is building a big screening of more than 600 downstream solutions leveraging Earth observation data. Again, both provided by public and private entities, trying to, first of all, understand how they're distributed across the region of investigation, and especially what are the main domains they address. And you see here quite of a parallelism between what we found in terms of policy analysis and project distribution, with agriculture, climate resilience, and digital quite high in terms of projects for each domain, and energy quite lower, with the peace and security domain signing kind of a change in pattern, with very limited recognition in policy, a quite high number of projects. This is due also to our inclusion within the peace and security domain of, for instance, the use case of the preservation of natural resources, which is addressed by many projects in Europe, and we'll hear more from the panelists on this item. But once you draw all these statistics, the main point is instead to see how these projects, how these EO-based solutions are distributed by the use cases and the policy objectives that we identified. So if we can move to the next slide, you see, for instance, an example in the climate resilience domain of how projects are distributed across, again, these use cases, from water scarcity and quality degradation to severe storms or extreme temperature monitoring. And you see that these domains with most of the projects collected, you have quite of a number of projects addressing each use case, over 80 downstream solutions, while some of this use cases obviously score far lower, and this could be a first sign of where some potential for new solutions might arise. But this is only possible by doing the third step of the analysis, and I'm heading towards the conclusion, which is matching in the next slide the outcome of the policy analysis and the project analysis. Sorry, Gillian, do you mind moving to the next slide, please? Yes, so once I'll give you 1 second to look at this table. We're quite familiar with it, but I understand might not be immediate. The idea here is to match with the two columns over each of the use cases, to match the level of prioritization, in this case in red, the level of prioritization of this objective in policies with the number of projects addressing them. And from this, we could identify a few gaps or more opportunities to be explored for the development of new solutions or for scaling existing pilots or efforts. Similar activity was done for all the other domains. If we can move to the next slide, we'll see some other examples that obviously you will find also commented in the report in terms of which gaps we identified. This is quite of an interesting one. You can see the number of gaps in the energy domain, which aligns with the more limited number of projects directly addressing energy objectives. We can also move to the next one just to have an overview of the agriculture domain. Please always consider this is fully available in the report or the digital domain. So let me just add a couple of considerations when we are discussing these opportunities. We always keep in mind that we're not assessing any technical feasibility. This is the job of ESA and private solution providers, but we try to identify where some exploratory new solutions can be developed. At the same time, we are not assessing in this project the size of the projects. And for this reason, some of the outcomes might require further investigation and especially kind of a domain-tailored approach to identify also what is the usual size of the solutions that address these use cases. If we can move to the next slide and final one. This report has a series of takeaways. I just want here to point you at a consideration. This being more of a dossier of domains and opportunities identified within the domains, the real takeaways of this report are within the whole document and could be relevant also depending on your profile and your specific interest. You might be focused only on the energy domain or only on the climate resilience, etc. While we saw some partners, let's say, somehow transversally to the report, the first, a clear shift that should be supported from monitoring functions to more actionable solutions. The second, an opportunity to leverage projects more transversally across the different domains and use cases because of the availability of valid solutions that address adjacent or similar use cases in other domains. Third, a significant untapped potential or a number of opportunities, especially in the energy and digital transition domains, also in the security domain for what concerns the diplomatic action use cases from human rights enforcement to treaty monitoring and others, but also in support of track 1.5 and track 2 diplomacy. And finally, a need to contribute to the further integration of Earth observation references within policies, which is also being done at the level of the European Commission, but especially at the national level as useful entry points to increase, again, the uptake, but especially the benefits of EO for these objectives. With this, I come to the end of an overview of the work of this year with a call that we added at the end of the policy vision document that I introduced at the beginning as an ESPI and ESA joint call for policymakers and space actors to contribute to this alignment of solutions with the policy needs. And I'm happy to also say that many reacted to this call throughout the process and since the beginning, and some of them you will hear in the panel right after. And I'm thanking them all in advance for joining us throughout this process, providing their expert input, and also participating now in the panel to comment and hopefully also to criticize or contradict some of the outcomes to make sure we can take action on them.
Thank you, Gabrielle. With that, I think we will transition into our panel. So I will hand the time over to Emily to introduce our panelists.
Hi, everyone. So now that we've had a glimpse into the report and some of the main results, we will now transition into the panel discussion. The report is just an initial step, and it's not just a document that we want to keep to ourselves, which is why we've decided to invite experts linked to the policy community to dive into the report with us, and together try to identify pathways to transforming the findings into tangible action. So the panel discussion will be 45 minutes, followed by a Q&A. So anybody who wants to ask any questions, feel free to do so in the Q&A section. And you can also do this throughout the discussion, and the questions will either be addressed at the end, or possibly also during the discussion if relevant. So I will introduce the kind of structure of the panel and then the panelists. So we will address 3 themes. First one will be policy and market. The second will address kind of bridging the gap, users and barriers of Earth observation, and then towards beyond monitoring and the scalability of solutions. So with that, I will introduce the panelists. Firstly, we've got Grete Janssens Manhout. We've got, she is the Deputy Director of the Sustainable Resources Directorate at the European Commission, the JRC. We've got Fanny Calanu de Jong, the Space Economy Lead at the EBRD. Andrea Taramelli will be joining us soon. He's a professor at IUSS Pavia. Massimo Tavoni, the director of the EIEE, that is the European Institute on Economics and the Environment, and Zinta Zommers, the lead for climate science at the UN OCHA, and the vice chair of Working Group 2 at the IPCC. So to kick everything off, I will start with a question for all of you. And whoever wants to respond first can respond. Otherwise, we can go through each of you individually. So first of all, we'd like to open with the question, in a world of competing priorities, which are the areas where the value of EO can best be recognized and scaled up? So what could be the sort of quick win solutions and or services that can be immediately prioritized? Grete, do you want to begin?
I'm happy to start it off. Thanks, Emily. So I'm working at the Joint Research Center, which is the scientific arm of the European Commission, and we provide scientific database evidence for policies. We do this on soil, forest, and climate. And I would say if I can choose one area where it's really needed, and I would say in the agriculture, forestry, and other land use sector, there is really need for Earth observation data and the use of that. I think it's quite evident that land managers always needed information on the weather. They need as well now more and more information on droughts, more prolonged droughts. They need information on early signals of plant pests. So they definitely are a good user of Earth observation products, not per se that they are dealing with the terabytes and terabytes of data. In the European Commission, we have embedded Earth observation into the CAP monitoring, the Common Agricultural Policy monitoring, I mean. And we have meanwhile as well moved forward with embedding this more and more inside policies for implementing the policies. And an example thereof is carbon farming. The carbon removal and carbon farming regulation was launched by the Commission 1.5 years ago to not just pay the farmers for cultivating crops and harvesting yield, but also for increasing the fertility of their land. Because if they increase the soil organic carbon, then your fertility of land is increasing. So this carbon farming project is innovative, not just for diversifying farmers' income, but also because it uses tools for setting up a carbon farming project that is needing Earth observation data. This delivers also more Earth observation data to us. It's Earth observation data with hybrid models that need to show that there is an additional carbon uptake in the soil. And I believe this is one of the examples where we can be proud of seeing that there is Earth observation uptake. Thank you.
So agriculture would be the main domain for you.
Agroforestry.
Yes, agroforestry. Mm-hmm. Okay. Does anybody want to go next? Massimo?
Yeah, I think let me echo also what Great said. I think in general, Earth observations related to environmental processes are really key to the understanding of this process, and especially of identify solutions which are effective, cost effective, and which are also fair. I'm thinking about energy and climate change as obviously, I think everyone is bringing a little bit to the table their own expertise. And by the way, I think you did a great job in covering most of these topics through this very large and very thorough survey that you have done, an assessment. Right now, in the survey you have done, you have energy and then you have climate resilience. Obviously, these themes are also interconnected. Climate change is obviously related to the way, largely to the way land is used, and even more largely to the way energy is produced and consumed. So we need to understand much better than we do right now where, first of all, the problem is arising and where the problem can be solved. And the problem arising is a question where are the emissions coming from, exactly what's their location. And we're talking just about greenhouse gas emission, but also the emission of local pollutants, which in Europe are still a big problem in many European countries. Italy alone, 60,000 deaths, premature deaths every year from bad air quality. And this is just concentrated in the northern part of the country, just to give you a very simple example of a very high impact. And this is related to emissions of fossil fuels and also of land use, by the way, and agriculture, as they also transform in secondary pollutants. So I think the pollution of carbon and the pollution of air pollution in relation to energy sources, land use sources, and their implication for climate change is of primary importance for the well-being of European citizens. It's also primary importance for the security of European citizens. And so it's in this kind of connection between these realms that I think there's a lot. You've covered both. You have the energy, you have the climate resilience, you have the agriculture, you have everything in the report, and maybe we're going to discuss a little bit in detail some of the also somehow surprising results that you find in some cases. But as a general rule, I think that's where we see the most value for society coming from, in this interaction between understanding where the sources of the problem are and ultimately where also the solution stands in terms of regenerative solutions on land use and also in terms of renewable sources and electricity grid and other energy sources to decarbonize the European energy system. Thanks. Okay, so land use and energy interactions along with pollution. Okay, Zinta, do you want to give your input?
Yeah, just quickly, I won't speak about domains, but more about how do we use this information operationally. And I think there are some easy wins to scale the use of Earth observation and satellite-based information. So for example, in the humanitarian sector, we use this information quite a lot at the headquarters level. We use it, for forecasting and also for damage assessments. But it could be better used at the country level because the country teams often don't have the analytical capacity. And this is often where actually the needs are. So I think we could work to raise awareness about these products and these tools and how to ensure that they're operational. I'll give you an example. In Sierra Leone, I was based in Sierra Leone in 2017 when there were major landslides, and we activated the International Charter on Space and Major Disasters. And actually, it was the European Space Agency that helped the response and analyze the information. but nobody in Sierra Leone, be it in the UN agencies or the government, was aware of this charter and how to activate it. And then I'll talk a little bit later, but getting that information then to be shared was incredibly challenging as well. And I think obviously, so that's outside of Europe, but even within Europe, I'm sure that there's a need to spread information about these tools, outside of capitals and into different parts of countries and region. Thanks.
So really pushing towards access at the local level and the country level. Andrea, do you want to go next?
Yes, thanks. Sorry for being late, but I'm happy to join you even if a little bit later. So I would like to build on the top of what Zinta has just said. It's not just a matter of like which is the thematic area that is, exploiting the Earth observation, uptake. It's how you use it. I think that it's quite clear that right now at European level, one of the gaps that the Earth observation could help in several thematic areas are the ones that are, dealing with the inside situational awareness. It can be applied to agriculture and food security, climate resilience, peace and security. The fact that right now also, let's put it in this way, also Copernicus cannot fully cover the inside situational awareness. It's really making clear how the Earth observation has a gap to fill. Also, activating the charter is quite accepted from also member states and so on, that what we are really still missing is something with like low latency information. Time for information is not just the acquisition, it's the latency. How we can get this information in a very fast time. And this applies to, let's say, emergency. It could be national civil protection, European civil protection, and the same applies to the agricultural and food security. It's the time of the latency and the temporal resolution that are still missing. And this is one of the major issues that Europe, as far as the evidence are telling us, is the fact that Europe is going in that direction. Building this low latency and higher temporal information is one of the missing part that European member states are really to push in the next few years, not just 10 years we made with Copernicus. We need that information in a low latency time in a very short time to implement this infrastructure. And this is challenging, and it's evident.
So really getting the information as soon as possible. This is also something that came up in our report. We did a few case studies, and this came up as a major issue, as kind of one of the main needs across most of the case studies, especially those focused on kind of disasters and search and rescue operations. Okay, then Fanny.
Thanks so much, Emily, and hi everyone. Very nice to share the online floor with you. And thank you to Gabriele and Lucy for the earlier intervention. And well done to ESPI for this report. I just want to say that I left all the others to talk so I can take your ideas. But the truth is I didn't want to choose one area, but I do think that the quick wins, if you want, would be for us as well as an international financial institution, probably in areas of agriculture and climate. So Massimo and Kate mentioned that. But I also recognize that a lot of these issues that you raised in the report are interconnected. And again, I'm not trying to steal Massimo's point, but it's true. I couldn't come up with one, area where Earth observation can provide, added value and obviously be used in our operations. So since we're, a bank, we do want to make sure if we use Earth observation that they are embedded within operations. And EBRD has started slowly but surely to use Earth observation in different areas to demonstrate this added value. And thanks to the European Space Agency, actually, we've managed so far to do almost four pilots. One is coming up now on water management. And when you looked at the climate and climate resilience slide that Gabriele shared, a lot of it was linked to the water and the drought and the flood. So you can see increasingly how water has an impact on things like agriculture, of course, what Grete mentioned earlier. So it is interconnected. And I think for us to start using it and demonstrate how Earth observation is adding value to operations would be the first step, just to recognize that, yes, it's adding value. But second, how it can basically increase and amplify the impact we're trying to achieve through our projects and our investments. And I mean, there's a saying, I don't know who came up with it. I love it every time I hear it, but it's, you cannot manage what you cannot measure. And here we are with Earth observation, science-based information. So not someone, inventing or trying to find a number. It's actually, coming from satellites is precise. I think the more we realize it's a better way to manage projects, policies, and everything because it's science-based. I think the greater the scale up of its usability, I would say. So I would like to say I didn't choose one area, but I think definitely there's a lot of value there to be identified. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think the climate and the agricultural domains, that's also something we saw in the report, that are very strongly represented also by the Earth observation projects already. So with this in mind, these would be kind of the quick wins, but then would we prioritize possibly other domains that maybe have a little bit less uptake of Earth observation solutions, or are we better off kind of putting our focus on really these areas where the use is already established and trying to sort of better the use of these applications that are already working well? I would ask this to anybody.
Let me comment. When you say when it's working well, then typically you have this app on a phone where it's all sorted out in a certain way that it's very accessible to use this data. This is, for instance, with this air quality app. This is all with some apps for farmers that have been developed. So wherever there has been from the huge Earth observation data, the digestion, the development behind for making it an actionable information that the user can immediately use, then the uptake we see is much bigger. We cannot expect from farmers that they start using whatever the Google Earth engine, for instance. No, that's a little bit an overkill. But such phone-driven applications are very much access.
So increasing sort of this accessibility aspect.
Tinta mentioned this as well, no?
Okay, then we'll stay with you for a second, Greet. Just in terms, kind of shifting over to the theme of policy and market. So to ensure that Earth observation goes beyond its traditional role, sort of as this technical tool that seems a little bit inaccessible, it needs to start being embedded into policy frameworks. On a practical level, how do we go about kickstarting this process? Can you provide any concrete examples where this is already the case or where it should be already the case?
So I see quite a lot of policy documents. We count, meanwhile, almost 100 policy documents where Earth observation and Copernicus products are mentioned within the policy. Of course, we have policy directives, and then we need to have, of course, implementation at state level. And so this needs then to come into the national legislation. This takes then also time to have this embedded there. The products that are taken up should not be oversold. That is what we have seen as well. I take an example that is maybe not the best example, but the forest monitoring law was proposed, has been withdrawn in the end. Forest monitoring, to my opinion, is still needed. We need to see whether our forests are resilient to climate changes, human pressures, and we should use the Earth observation data. This is monitoring forests is much more than monitoring trees. That is monitoring an ecosystem with many indicators, and we can get from the Earth observation data also meanwhile heights, meanwhile as well the horizontal and vertical biodiversity structure and so forth. This is so far maybe too far-fetched for becoming really applicable, and we don't have yet for the forest owners an immediate product there. And so many forest owners or even land managers don't know what to do. Shall we leave the dead wood in the forest because we are here in a quite arid region, or shall we take it out? So there are many aspects there. On the one hand, you don't want to have too much fuel wood if this is a fire risk prone region. At the other hand, you want to keep biodiversity as high as possible, and for which you need some wood in a wet forest as well. So I believe it's in particular there where it's a quite broad area with many different aspects, many different indicators, where we need more time, we need to develop products, and we need to validate these products. And when we then have the right products, we will see as well the uptake, but it takes time. Thank you.
Okay, then I think we can move to Fanny and the perspective of the EBRD. So we identified these 6 domains that represent policy priorities across ESA member states. To what extent would you say that these align with investment priorities?
Thanks, Emily. Again, a bit of a difficult question for me. Even though we're called European Bank, we're not actually European. So I wouldn't know all the policies that Geert, for example, mentioned, and apologies for that. But I do think that, of course, our objectives as a bank, and I know Zinta is also not EU focused, but I think because we are essentially operating in 40 economies. Sorry, I should have said that for people who don't know EBRD. So it's a development bank, international financial institution with a regional focus that initially was only for the former USSR, right, after the fall of the Berlin Wall. Quick history here. And then we expand into Mongolia, Turkey, Northern Africa. Now we're going to Sub-Saharan Africa and Iraq. So you can see the policies I'm talking about are not the ones you are dealing at home in Europe on a day-to-day basis. But of course, a lot of the countries are still very much part of the EU, let's say Poland, Romania, all the Baltic states, etc. So there is some overlap, right? And then when you look at our mandate and our objectives as an institution, of course, green transition, digital transition is a big thing, economic governance. So, we are very much investing in Ukraine. Of course, it's a country of operation for many years. So we are part of the overall supporting institution financially for such things. So you start looking at all the areas you mentioned in your report, and of course, energy, climate, agri, everything is there, right? So it is a priority from our point of view on our policies and what we as a bank are looking at doing these in the countries where we do invest in. And then you start thinking, are we talking about investments that are enabling Earth observation or investments that are, let's say, related to investing directly in upstream, so satellite operations, right? So we have a banking team called the Telecommunication, Media and Technology banking team in EBRD that is able to invest in any satellite operation. So it can be remote sensing, obviously telecommunication and navigation. So on this end, you have a direct investment that can be made. So that's part of our, let's say, policy, and space, definitely, the remit of space falls under that priority. But then if you look at the downstream segment, again, as I said, Earth observation used for agriculture or climate resilience, etc., then you could see that there are a lot of investments that would definitely be able to use, let's say, again, Earth observation as part of the investment of the project, but wouldn't be directly investing in a company that is doing the analysis or the analytics, so to speak. I wanted to maybe mention one of our flagship program, which is called the Green Cities, again, because that shows the scale or how we can replicate across many countries. And that was one of the pilots, or almost finished with European Space Agency, where we took one green city of the EBRD. So far, we have, I think, 70 cities, and obviously it's increasing every year, where we are using Earth observation directly embedded into that project, into one city. We call it the Green Action Plan with the municipality, and then it's basically translate into investment plans, on urban heat resilience, on, air pollution, etc. So all these indicators that a municipality wouldn't necessarily have at hand, we are able, through these Earth observation projects with ESA, for example, to fill in the gaps and allow this project to go, obviously, to become more robust. So I would think that a lot of these, again, climate and agriculture project, I would say, is the most obvious where investments can be linked, but of course the others are also relevant. I think in the report I was happy to see that on the digital transition, I think one of the highest mention of Earth observation in digital policies was Greece and Latvia. I mean, I'm Greek originally, so I was pleasantly surprised to see my home country mentioned there. But Latvia, again, an example, Latvia is a country of operation of EBRD, so it's really interesting to see that our member countries at EBRD are also, actually using Earth observation and mentioning them as an added tool, as a tool, let's say, in their toolkit in policies such as digital transition. So again, quite a different picture here from my perspective, but I think definitely there are many areas where there is relevance for investments to be linked to that. Thank you.
Yeah, I think there was quite a bit of difference between the different countries. So it was interesting looking at it at a European scale, but also really at this national level as well, because it kind of acknowledged the national differences. We'll now shift over to the energy domain. Massimo, this is your sort of area of expertise. The report identifies the energy domain as having the lowest alignment between policy and EO project uptake, but with energy sovereignty and security rising to the top of the agenda. Do you see this as a catalyst that could help to bridge this gap, or does it risk sort of a trade-off with longer-term sustainability goals?
Well, thanks. And first of all, again, congratulations for the incredible work you have done in mapping the energy and climate sectors, which I found really impressive. And when I saw the report, it stands out as energy is really be the sector which is where the gap is the largest, according to the estimates of the policy documents that we have done. And I said, oh, well, it doesn't make sense. And then, the report is about making sense also. So I was a bit puzzled at the beginning. But then, looking at some of the details of the specific breakdown and some of the things you are saying in fine prints, or even actually not in fine prints, made it all sense. What you find is that indeed in the energy sector, the uptake is lower than in other sectors, but it is the highest among the commercial sector. It is the lowest for the academic sector, which I also partly represent, only 1%. I said, oh my God, academics are lagging behind. And I think the research is lagging behind. And this is one of the cases where sometimes the commercial sectors and private sectors can get faster. Why? Because there are real interest. And indeed, it is concentrated to the sectors of renewable installations and renewable operations, for which you need, obviously, to have predictions about the weather in the coming days and for the best maintenance of the entire energy system, and also for the optimization for private sectors of their own plants. And also to energy infrastructure, which again is one of the key points in your discussion. That all makes sense, but it is missing some key element, which I think are very important. And you mentioned energy security, because this is something that is obviously well we don't need to say much about it, except it's obvious on everyone's agenda. We had a major European energy crisis 4 years ago. Now we are experiencing another energy crisis, not of the same magnitude, but certainly of significant magnitude as well. And the question is, to what extent can we use Earth observation to also decouple or increase our energy security? This is connected to the energy transition that I was just describing, and obviously a stronger electrification and a stronger reliance on domestic renewable energy sources can help foster energy transition and energy security at the same time. So two goals that would coincide. And then would align the sustainability dimension and the security dimension, which traditionally has been kind of framed as a trade-off. Either you want one or you want the other. Actually, the typical trilemma: you want it cheap, you want it secure, you want it clean, and you cannot have the three things together. I think this is obviously now possible to have the three things together, and I think Earth observations can work as a catalyst for making the achievability of this, what was traditionally seen as a trilemma, actually some as policy goals that can be oriented as being attained. Through better Earth observation, we can site renewables better, and it's really crucial to site them well, to put them where not only the production is the highest, but where the demand is also going to be the highest, where the infrastructure can allow renewable integration at the lowest cost and at the better service for everyone, and the low and the best security. And more as we move into more digitalized and electrified energy systems with electrification of and new sectors such as transportation and buildings, homes transform themselves is also in their role of energy providers and storer, not just as energy consumers. And that opens up for the huge question of the digitalization and the management of the energy demand, for which Earth observation again become really, really important. So I see this as a kind of alignment and a kind of a catalyst for facilitating the achievement of these three traditionally opposing goals. Let me also say that energy is connected to the environment, as this was mentioned before by Fanny and others. So there's a strong interconnection, and we need to know and use Earth observations to understand where the source of pollutions are coming from if we want to transition to a cleaner and more secure energy system. One such example where there is policy evidence is, for example, through the Methane Alert and the Response Systems, the MARS system of the United Nations, which is using Copernicus infrastructure for measuring very large amounts of methane release. Methane is a very potent greenhouse gas. It can increase in the short term, has very high impact on global warming. And this is an initiative that in a way this is very much related to the energy infrastructure, natural gas in particular, although of course methane comes also from other sources. This is an example where not only we can use Earth observation for the planning of the transformation of the energy system, so looking at for the next few years, but we can also use Earth observations with lower latency, as Andrea was saying, possibly ideally in higher temporal resolution to address emergencies that appear and that can be solved and that can have detrimental consequences for climate.
So you think EO could really contribute to solving the trilemma here?
I think the trilemma is being solved by technology in a way. The technology that we have right now is putting us in a condition to solve this traditionally energy trilemma. But I think energy observation is a powerful catalyst in making that technologies work together and make that possible, yes. And at the same time, monitoring environmental consequences of this transition. I think these things are interconnected, and for that we also need observations to understand the effectiveness of this in lowering our dependence on fossil fuels and our dependence on fossil imports from outside Europe.
And do you think then this limited uptake of Earth observation projects that we found through the report, do you think this is then mainly related to like funding cycles in the kind of academic domain or entry barriers, where I guess like for the commercial sector, it's a bit more straightforward than for academia?
That's what I thought when I saw the results, and it kind of made sense. Makes sense, exactly. And because the traditional academic and research community in this field has been not very well integrated in the Earth observation community traditionally. So that might explain, and I don't know the reason why this is the case, but it's certainly the disconnection between the research world and the commercial world, which is very much engaged with these kind of things, explain it. And ultimately, policy making is made also by persons who are in between research and policies, right? So they do often have a relation with the research world. And if that is not popping out or being very explicit, that is certainly true. Let me give an example from IPCC. I've been involved in IPCC several rounds in the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change that kind of summarize the states of the art on climate science and climate solutions every 7 years or so. And there, for example, the reference to Earth observations also in terms of research was stronger in the climate science side itself, but when it comes to the solutions in the energy space, for example, it wasn't very strong. So as a testament to the fact that there's still kind of needed research gaps that hopefully are gonna be solved.
Mm-hmm. Hopefully we can start to fill these gaps, and as it kind of keeps rising to the top of the agenda, maybe it serves as a catalyst for this as well. Okay, then let's move on to beyond monitoring. Zinta, this is definitely your area of expertise. What about the co-designing of Earth observation solutions? Like, it can generally be a bit of a buzzword. So what does this actually look like in practice? So at what stage should the end users be brought into the process? And what is the difference sort of between co-design and then validation?
Yeah, I mean, I think the co-design has to take place at all stages of the process. So the end users need to obviously be thought of both in the design, but also you need to think about them when, you think about how this product will be delivered. There's a lot of work going on in this area. So to give you an example, at UNEP, at the UN Environment Program, already over a decade ago, we were looking at how to ensure that early warning systems better reach the last mile, so the user communities. And we went to very, very rural communities in Kenya, Ghana, and Burkina Faso to interview women, farmers, elderly, youth, and individuals with disabilities to say, what do you need? How can we get you this information? And by doing that, by speaking with the users and engaging with them, you obviously find out a lot of information that you may have not considered. So as an example, we thought that many of these groups might not have access to some of the mobile phone systems. We talk about apps being created, that might not be available to some of them. But for some, actually, this was something that was available. So just speaking with users and engaging with them in the process is obviously very critical. I think as Massimo mentioned, often that's not possible to go directly to the community. It's expensive. So what you can do is speak with the kind of groups that are the straddle both the policy sphere and communities. So the humanitarian sector, for example, is one such group that often knows and can reach the local level, but is based potentially internationally, more easy to access. And here, for example, is an example of what we need, maybe a gap that could be filled going forward. Even in this report, the domains that are analyzed are often single hazard based. So what might happen if there's water scarcity. But at the local level, the community level, we're dealing with multiple hazards. So, what might happen if you have a flood and disease, or if you had flood and conflict. And so creating products that can better address the impacts of these multiple hazards is something that we very much need. So we can get into that maybe in next steps, but just certainly thinking about what does the user need is really important as we move forward. And another major challenge that can be addressed in designing these products is obviously not the design, but how do you deliver that data? And where I've worked, often that's the biggest challenge, is you have the wonderful information, but we can't get it to the people simply because the bandwidth, for example, isn't large enough. That the example I mentioned from Sierra Leone, once the maps and the information was created, we actually were able to present it to the cabinet and to the president, and they found this incredibly useful. But then the MPs wanted to share it further to their constituents, and they just couldn't download the product, couldn't share it by email, couldn't, and that might be a factor of bad bandwidth in Sierra Leone. But certainly we know that in all the countries where we work, be it in Europe, North America, Africa, there are pockets of places, often those are the places that are the most remote, actually in need of this information, where we can't get them that information easily. So certainly thinking about the final stage and how you're going to distribute this is equally important as thinking about the users at the beginning.
So staying on this topic of end users, Andrea, the report includes case studies on the operational use of Copernicus data by public administrations. What would you say is the main bottleneck in bridging the gap between data and local administrations?
Yeah, it is one of the major issues. If we start from what also was sentenced by the European Court, saying that Copernicus, it's a very successful program, but it's not yet there in terms of really local uptake. So we are still missing. And what is one of the major issues? I'm always trying to simplify in saying we have two major issues. First of all is the accountability. The people that are on the ground needs a very accountable information, not data. It's the information. I'm always saying they don't care if it's from Earth observation or from other type of measurements. They need something that is accountable, that they can trust. So this goes also on what Zinta was already saying. The co-creation of the data and the information it has to start from the very beginning, because if you go when you have something in, let's say, a land cover map or whatever is, forestry map and so on, and they don't have co-build, that information, for them is not accountable. And this is a shortcoming, because they have to be, sure that what they are going to use as a measure, as something that they are going to be used for the policy implementation, is a standardized and accountable one. And this is still missing. So a co-creation from the very beginning. When all Copernicus started, there was a roadmap with the implementation group, with a high-level implementation group. So with the National Civil Protection, with National Meteorological Office, and so on, but nothing with the locals. So this is something that has to be, we have to go forward on that. So we need to start the co-creation with local level, and we have to think about the issues that at local level, they have some primary law at national level that are, assimilated at regional level. So they have to stick to this primary and regional law. And we have recently made also a publication on that. If you want to use Earth observation for, let's say, for the Paris Agreement requirements for greenhouse gases, it's still very fragmented, the offer that we can get from the Earth observation domain and also from Copernicus. So we have to avoid this fragmentation of data and information, because at that point is not accountable. And so they do prefer to stick to the old style measurements and information. So we have to fill this gap. In order to fill this gap, really strong uptake strategies has to be put on the ground. And this is something that I'm the national delegate at the Copernicus Committee and the User Forum in Brussels. We're really pushing the European Commission not to, again, have this top-down approach. We have this discussion with the JRC a lot. Don't go on a top-down approach, because this is not going to work with local level and so on, because they have duties daily to implement. If this is going to help them in these daily duties, they will use that. But it has to be accountable, not fragmented, and accurate. This is still missing. Even if Copernicus is a very, very successful program, we are still missing that. And if you go to the offer for the greenhouse gases, they have to go both to the climate change services and to the land services. So also that to dig out the information that they need. They need to go to very different services, very different type of data and information. So they have to put all together to get the information that they need. So this is something that, I was, this morning there is a task force at European level with the member state to think the vision of that. So you get all the information in a very fragmented way. And the information itself is also fragmented. So the uptake strategy is not to produce new information. What we discuss a lot at the committee, at the user forum, is the fact that, yes, of course, we need, as I was telling you before, the inside situational awareness. So we need to downsize the latencies. But again, do we really need way much more new satellite and new data? Maybe we already have enough data and information, and we need to build up a roadmap how to build the final information that the local user, also the national user, can really use in the report for European Commission and so on. This is still missing, and I'm not telling a new highlight. It was the European Court that was stating that, saying this is the line that the Earth observation and Copernicus to take, and still is not taken enough. So an uptake strategy, a more comprehensive uptake strategy with the real end user. Another thing that I'm always underlining is the fact that also Copernicus is dealing not with the real end user, in what we call the intermediate user. They are maybe research scientists, developers, and so on. This applies also to the private sector. They are not yet there. So you need to go to the real final end user. The user forum at national level, European level, it's a way, but it's not enough. So you have to build several programs on that.
So again, really this importance of co-design and co-creation from the very, very beginning and at the most local level. Would you also say there's an issue with sort of data delivery, so the data getting to the right people, and that the data is also accessible, say in the form of a would you say there's lacking more technical capabilities?
It's still to me, Emily, the question?
Yes.
I do think that most of the time, what European Commission is always thinking that having a platform or an app, a tool, will make easy the data delivery. Is not that the line. I'm always sort of like not nasty, but very negative on the way where the European Commission, also the USPA platform, the USPA user platform, is not even helping in really reaching the data delivery and so on. When we talk about infrastructure, you need the data in the infrastructure, but you also need the knowledge. So to have the data getting to the things, to the people, you really need the knowledge. I make an example. We made a test, and it's almost 4 years that we are sort of like making a roadmap with like high school people, children and youngers. I think not even the 20% of them knows Copernicus and the Earth observation. These are the future. So if they don't even know at that age, and they are, already native digital, so they must know. They have no idea about Copernicus and the Earth observation, how they can, maybe they use in the app and so on, but they have no idea. So the knowledge of that, it's really important, it's really missing. So it's not just a platform, a data deliver, it's also delivering the knowledge of that. This is another part that is really missing. And if we really look to the young people that are really digital, they don't know. They may be used, but they have no awareness about that. So this is a really huge gap that we need to cover.
So increasing the accessibility of the data itself, but also the capabilities of the people on the ground that would be using the data.
Yeah.
Okay, then I think we can move to a question for everybody. In one of the main takeaways of the report reveals a sort of cycle. With the more impactful projects that we see, the more awareness is built among the policymakers. whereas integrating Earth observation into policy frameworks unlocks the opportunity to develop the solutions. So we always talk about what needs to be done, but we don't always talk about who needs to do it. So who would you say should take ownership or responsibility in this case? Is this sort of is it financial institutions? Is it research institutes? Is it international bodies? Are they policymakers, European Commission? Is it the space community? So who really needs to kind of start this cycle that we identified? Greet, do you maybe want to start?
I believe we need to have different people working together on this. Building a solution, you need not only to create it, you need as well to bring it on the market, you need the economic aspects of it. And this requires a collaboration, multiple disciplines that come together. I think when it comes to the Commission, I believe we do want with the Copernicus program explicitly that the companies are involved. So we talk about the downstream component where we would hope that companies build apps that are taken up or with users improvements on certain things and that we have it not top-down developed by the Commission. So that is a bit what I believe on this.
Fanny, do you want to provide your input?
Yes, no, I was a bit taken aback by Massimo because I've been brainwashing my kids about Copernicus, so I've got flyers everywhere. I've got I'm trying to build the next generation, but I think it wouldn't be financial institution that would lead the way, I would say, on using Earth observation, but definitely because as an international financial institution, we have different mandates, and our mandate specifically, so at EBRD, is to promote and support the private sector, industries across the region where we operate. So in a way, it's not putting, let's say the task on them, but if the private sector across the industries, transport, energy, etc., agriculture, say we need that to become more effective, cost effective, or faster, or more efficient, then we will adapt or we will meet our clients on this. So again, of course, Gerrit said a lot of people need to be involved, and of course, inclusion when you make such decisions is needed. And I really liked also the aspect and let's say the angle that Zinta brought with her examples earlier, because access to that connectivity or access to information is a first step, right? So if they don't even know what they could get or where are the benefits, how do we expect them to be part of the decision making or actually say, yes, we need this, or yes, it will be valuable for our communities, industries, etc. So again, it is an ecosystem that requires different perspectives. And I do think that international financial institutions have a role to play, and luckily that's why you invited me here to show that perspective. But it's definitely not one, top down or bottom up. But I think it's both at the same time, showing the relevance, but showing also the added value for each of these players and end users. So yes, it is coming around one, not one table physically, but basically these forums and exchanges that you are facilitating at ESPI, especially, I think are very much, part of this, valuable exchange of ideas, but also to realize you have different players, different stakeholders that would actually make their operations better if they knew that this is available. And Andrea, you mentioned something very important. End users don't care if it's satellite or not, wherever the information comes. I agree. I mean, I'm clearly passionate about the topic, but for the last 17 years I was in the climate team of EBRD. Now I'm transitioning in showing how Earth observation is relevant, and for many objectives of the bank. So not only the green transition, but the majority of the projects I'm doing with the help of the space ecosystem is exactly for that, is to support the the climate and green transition, but also addressing the needs of the industries. So again, you can see the cross-domain fertilization that we mentioned in the beginning is again coming back when you say who should move it forward. I think it's a collective effort, and ultimately people will do it for their own reasons or their own interests, but collectively it is adding value. It's clear, it's clear that it should be promoted. But yes, it will help if we have better tools and better ways to pass it on to the ones that need it. And that obviously I'm not an expert in that, but definitely I think user-friendly and easily digestible information would ultimately be the best way to do it. And again, we don't have to say it came from space. Of course, that makes sense for us, but the end users just wants an answer to their problem, whatever that problem is. So that's my
So making
my
the
take.
data itself and the services that come from it more usable in a way.
Yes, and digestible. Obviously, if they don't have the platforms or the right softwares, and how do they get that data? How do they use it? How do they make it, effectively part of their operations, or answer questions to to address their needs? Yes, thanks.
Okay, Zinta, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I agree that it's everybody has a role to play. And just to give you an example, at OCHA, we've been able to help bridge the gap between early warning and early action by designing anticipatory action frameworks, which are basically action plans backed by funding and based on a forecast or a trigger. So it says if this satellite image shows X, Y, or Z, then we will release this amount of funding so that these organizations or the national government can take action. And over the last about 5 years, we've designed 25 frameworks in 20 countries and had $124 million backing these. So OCHA obviously does the backing with the humanitarian funding, but what's very critical is that we have the images or the Earth observation that is available and is free and available in a timely fashion, as was mentioned. So it's regularly updated, that we can use to constantly check and monitor the situation to see if a trigger threshold has been crossed. So here again, that would be the role of researchers, of scientists, of the Earth observation community in helping provide that information that's really critical. And then you have the communities on the ground that have to be ready to take action and design the action plans. So we all have different roles to play in really taking this information and scaling it and using it on the ground. I'll maybe end there. I know time's running out.
Yeah, just in the interest of time, Massimo, do you want to go ahead?
I think everyone has been said exactly along the lines of what I thought. So for also making sure that we get questions, I'll stop you.
Okay. Andrea, do you have something to add? Otherwise, we can go into the Q&A.
Just a quick issue is the fact that in order also to my statement, I'm happy that is shared about the user, the final user is not interested in where it's coming. So in order to get them really, let's say, interested in the fact that some Earth observation data can solve a lot of issues in their daily work, is the fact that in the co-working, I do think that it's something that I'm always discussing with the Space Agency, not only ESA, but also with the National Space Agency. They need to know which are the rules that, and so the policy they have to implement in order to clean the information, something that is accountable and useful. They really have to go in the line. That's something that now the JRC with the key CEO is doing at European level, but it's not enough. It's good that the JRC with the key CEO is doing this assessment with the different DG and so on. But then you have to go to the national and to the local level. So which are the policies that they are going to, to be useful for some of the information? This is something that is always missing.
Thank you. Then there is a question in the Q&A for all the panelists. You've mentioned the intricacies of cross-domain use cases and applications. To increase the uptake of EO solutions at national level, would you say that the space sector should focus on transboundary natural resources, such as water? Greet, do you want to?
This is a good idea. I believe. We have seen that indeed water resources, in particular in Africa, we have had some projects which has shown that what is done upstream has repercussions on the countries downstream to work on waterways and so on, and to monitor that. We have the Global Surface Water Explorer in particular for this, to look into both surface water extension and hence as well potential problems. And so it's good to have there, as data-based science is neutral, to have that as a basis for whatever discussion between countries is a good thing, to my opinion. Yeah.
Okay. Does anybody want to add their opinion to this?
I can build on the top of what Greet has already said. It's something that member state and delegates like me are always underlined to the European Commission, the user forum, the committee. Also in the uptake, usually the European Commission is like the national collaboration program with the different entrusted entities are targeted to the single member state. But especially for the environment, let's say air quality, but greenhouse gases and so on, they have no boundaries. So it's a little bit unusual that you make some sort of like application with the boundaries. I'm always saying that when you do the uptake, it will be successful when you will see no boundaries between European member state, because the policy are European. Then you have but the same apply, outside Europe. The approach is still with boundaries, and so I appreciate what was in the question and answer is the fact that we still need to have this vision without boundaries, at least at European level. There's no boundary because water flow, air quality, is a fluid dynamic and so on. How we can treat this? The same apply to the common agricultural policy. We still keep the boundary between things, and how you can apply the same scheme between the Netherlands and the southern of Italy. It's very different. So you really need to trim. So this is one of the issues that we have to force. It's a major issue. We want to be Europe. Do we have a security system, a European security system? We have a European water management system and so on. We still miss that. Use the Earth observation to do that, because Earth observation has no boundary.
Does anybody else have something to add to this specific question? Otherwise, we can go into kind of final comments. So if each of you could provide kind of one word, one sentence to sort of sum up what you feel about the report, what you feel maybe are the next steps, that would be great. So I can go starting with you, Massimo.
I think it would be great to get more access to the underlying data. I mean, you've done a huge work here, and you have really scanned the literature. I think what we want to show is that it makes sense, and I think you've showed that, right? But also, as we discussed through this in this conversation, we want to have some practical proposals to integrate the various communities. To do that, we need to pull out some specific cases of success or areas of concern, and you're doing that in the document already. But I think if you could also bring that knowledge and share the underlying resources and all the underlying data that you have done, and to the best use of the community, I think we can use that as an opportunity for bringing for making stronger synergies between the various stakeholders.
So increasing access to the underlying data, making sure the solutions are practical. with specific case studies?
I mean, how do you bring this? I mean, I think the point here is, I mean, you've done this effort. How do you make the most of it, and how do you maximize the value of the effort you have done? And I think the effort shouldn't stop. I don't know if you are planning on doing follow-ups. I mean, it would be good maybe to know from you and Gabriele what are the intention of ESPI regarding this. What I'm thinking is that there's a lot of value in underlying all the study and the report that you have done, and you have all these very nice visual graphics and about the gap and the potential. But I think there's more that can be extracted, hopefully.
Gabriele will say a line in a second about kind of what's upcoming in this sense. Quickly, Greet, do you have kind of a final word or sentence on the next steps?
Final word is congratulations. This report merits congratulations. It's really nice. I think in Europe we should be proud that database science is and information-based policy making is really there, that helps policy coherence, that avoids impulsive decision making. And we need reports like this one, and we need enthusiastic people that indeed promote the uptake of Earth observation throughout different layers, whether it's policymakers, whether it is private companies. We need that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Zinta?
I know we're over time, so I will keep it short just to say congratulations. And I hope you'll do outreach also to the different sectors so that everybody who's working in energy, for example, might be aware of some of the gaps that can be filled, and we can make headway particularly in those areas. Over.
Thank you. And Fanny?
Very quickly, yes, congratulations. And I hope my fellow panelists don't mind, but I think I would like to continue the discussion together. So I will reach to all of you because I think there's quite a few areas where I'm interested to know more about. So watch this space. Thank you so much.
And Andrea?
Also from my side, congratulations. It is a really interesting report. If I can summarize in a words, it would be, as a next step, moving from what is a use case based to a more wide vision. So you did a very strong effort in putting all these, let's say, use case and thematic area, then translate that to a more coherent vision. It's something that is still missing, and it could be a benchmark against which we can discuss further, and also with the European Commission.
Thank you very much. Thank you for all the very, very valuable inputs and very exciting discussion. I will hand over to Gabriele to close because I know we're just running over time.
Thank you, Emily. Thank all of you who provided their thoughts and reflections. I was really interested in all these points. I took good notes in the meantime, so we'll build on them beyond also what I posted in the chat. But I wanted to thank all the people that attended, that stayed, that will bring home the outcomes of this discussion. We are seriously interested in taking action on this report. I'm probably the one, in this sense, less enthusiastic in the sense that until we see, let's say, concrete steps coming from the implementation also of the considerations that we're making in the report, we were never, let's say, happy enough. But I really trust that thanks to your help, to the people who we are getting in contact, and please get in contact with us, we can really take action on these items. Concretely, we have been working on the vision part of it, also to take a point from Professor Taramelli in the end. And we'll be happy to discuss, starting from that document, also how to make it more concrete, to be brought also to the relevant institutions, to institutionalize processes, also of the space enthusiasts going into the ministries, but becoming kind of a structured process that is also resilient in the European context. We are looking this year quite strongly into the water domain. also to reply to one of the questions that was in the chat, we're working quite significantly into the water domain, and we are happy to get inputs. In this case, we are really assessing the size of the projects and bringing together the communities, especially in a domain where the commercial element is coming up from a more kind of development funded domain in the past, and where some others have already provided good case studies like the World Bank or others in terms of what EO can do, but having a bit of a more structured and approach in a context of European EU updates in terms of water policies and directives, but also with the UN conference at the end of the year in the UAE on a new, let's say, on a new reflection on water policies, and where we want to bring space policy quite strongly. The second domain we want to investigate more into is definitely the energy, where we're trying to identify how to take these opportunities. But this, as we have heard from our panelists, spreads into all the other subjects, and we'll be happy to get help, mainly from you, to get continuous along this this mission that in the end, as ESPI will bring forward as a quasi-international organization with no profit, but towards really the promotion of European space policy, European space activities. Thanks everyone again. Thanks Emily in particular, Gillian for organizing this meeting, and to the other ESPI colleagues who supported throughout the process. As you can imagine, it's not the work of 3 people, and we are happy to also share insights beyond on the data we have that might be relevant for your work. Thanks again, and a final thanks to Lucy and the whole ESA team who is behind this work, providing the necessary support and revising all the work. Lucy is the coordinator of the whole project, but there are many others whom I thank really on a personal level. Thanks again, and hope to see you again in similar occasions. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.